What if you could build a real-world TypeScript web application, typed end-to-end, deployed, and ready for users? That's exactly what we're going to do. From here on out in this series, we're going to be building this, the service-based business web application, featuring an awesome landing page with a strong call to action, a services tab where we can view the services that this business offers, a booking tab where we can actually go through and book one of the services, and even an admin dashboard that is password protected, so only the authorized users can view this. This is where we can see what services have been booked, and all of it is written in TypeScript. Okay, let's get started by setting up our homepage. Let's go ahead and make this bigger so we can see this. We can actually delete everything in here except for our use client directive, and we will replace it with just a basic default export of home. We have our main tag in here, and since we set this up with Tailwind, we can actually add class names to this to do a lot of the styling for us. So this is actually going to be a parent, and we can do this hcalc. We're saying we want this to be 100% of the viewport height minus 60 pixels. That's going to leave room for the header at the top. And then I'll show you that here in a moment. In here, we're going to add an image tag coming from Next.js. This is used to optimize the loading of the images. Now, this tag does require some properties we have to add to it. Mainly a source, and as with any image, it needs an alt tag. And for this one, we're going to tell it to fill the relative space, and we're actually going to give it a class name as well of hero. We're going to fill these properties in, but for now we're going to leave those blank. I am using a package in this project called Framer Motion, so we're going to have to install that as a dependency. npm I framer -motion. Once that's installed, underneath our image tag here, we can do a motion.div. And what this is going to do for us is it'll actually animate things in based on some of the parameters we pass it. Now you can see here TypeScript doesn't know what motion is, so we are going to have to import that. Import motion from framer-motion. We need to give this an initial property here, and what we're saying is we want this to be initially opacity of 0. And you can see IntelliSense working, which is awesome. And we want to be position Y of 20. This is just saying move it 20 pixels down. For animating this particular property, we want to animate to opacity of 1. So we're going from 0 to 1. And we want to go position Y of 0. So what this is going to do, it's going to start off with opacity 0 and move down 20. And then it's going to fade in opacity while it's moving up at the same time. We can define how long we want this animation to take with the transition property. Something with a duration of like 0.5, for example. That's going to be fairly quick, but enough to see what's going on. And then we can also give this a class name. For this one, we're going to make it a display flex. It is a child of the parent. We want it to be flex call. And this is all Tailwind classes, so it's going to apply a lot of this styling automatically. We want to center our items with item center and justify center. We want it to take up as much of the space as we can, and we want to have some padding on it. Padding of, let's say, 8. All right, inside this div, we do want it to have some actual text that we can see. So first we will do an h1. H1, there we go. With a class name of text. We want it to be pretty big, 6XL. Font, bold. Again, these are all Tailwind classes. Add some margin bottom to this guy. And then we can define what we want this text to be. We'll skip that for now. We'll add a p tag in here. Also with the class name, the margin bottom, we're going to be a little bit less on this one, margin bottom 4. We do want this one to be just a little bit smaller, so we'll go XL as opposed to 6XL. We also want it to be center. And we want to give it a max width with max WLG. Okay, we've already done a lot here, but it'll all make sense here in a second when I show you what it all looks like. Also inside of here, we're going to add another div. We're going to make it a div.flex with a gap of 4. Okay, inside our div, we need to add a link, which comes from Next. Links need an href so they know where to go. And a class name. This class name here says we want padding on the X sides of padding 4, padding on the Y sides of padding 2. We want the background to be blue, the text to be white, and we want it to be rounded. So this link is going to look a lot like a button. Here we can say view services, view services. And practically we're going to copy and paste this guy. Instead of view services, we're going to put book today. And we're going to change the color from background blue to background green. Okay, this first one here, as you could have guessed, is going to go to our services route, which we have not built yet. This one here is going to go to our book route, which we have also not built yet. So this all looks great. This all looks awesome. But what does it do? So we can actually start our project. First, we need to save this. So we can start our project with npm run dev. What this is going to do is run our project locally on a local host port 3000. So we can click on that and we can see we've got our 2 buttons here. Now, since I didn't add any text to that H1 or that paragraph tag, we're not seeing those show up. But we want them to look like this, right? We want it to do something like this. Let's go ahead and copy that. We'll put that in our H1. And we'll put this in our paragraph. Cool. Give that a save. And NEXT.js actually hot reloads this, so anytime you save, you can just go back to your web browser and you can see your changes take effect. Now, one thing that's obviously missing here is our background image. For that, and any other images in this project, I'm going to be using unsplash.com. It's a free, high-quality image service that lets you pull images in with no hassle. I've already downloaded a few of the images that I wanted for this project, so I'm just going to copy them into my repo here. The best way to do that is to go to our public folder, create a new one for static/images, and in this images folder, we can pull in our images that we want. I have 5 here and I've named them accordingly. Now the one that we want to mimic what we have here, I've named web code block. So in our source attribute, we can point at that and we want to tell it we're looking at static/images, images/web code block. And we also want to make sure we include the image type, which in this case is a JPG. And if I give this a save, we should see this image populate. Now it looks kind of funny, doesn't quite fit exactly what we want it to do just yet, which is exactly why we gave it that class name of hero. Now we also need to ensure that we fill in this alt attribute. You can put whatever you want here, just make sure it's descriptive enough for the screen readers to pick up, so we have our accessibility standards. I put IDE with code written in various colors. Now going over to this class name hero, we need to create some CSS so that actually does something. It's easiest to put it in our global CSS file. This probably isn't best practice, but it will cover the whole project, so that's where I'm putting it. And we can do .hero to let it know that it's looking for a class of name hero. We're telling it to have a z index of -1. That means put it behind everything else. Cut down its opacity a bit and make sure its object fit is cover. So if we give both these pages a save here, we can go back to our project and we can see this is the live version of the app. This is our version of the app. We're getting much, much closer. Now, one thing that's obviously missing, if we go back here, you can see in our live version, we have this little footer with these text icons here, and we have a header. We don't have either one of those in our version, but we're going to start with the footer. This is actually a great example of why we added that components folder in the previous video. So we can actually go to this components folder. We're going to create a new file. We're going to name it hero tags. Why not? Okay, we can add our export for our hero tags. And if you're wondering what that sorcery was, I'm actually using an extension for this called Simple React Snippets. This lets you do all kinds of shortcuts, and it fills in a lot of this boilerplate for you. Either way, we have our hero tags export now. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take advantage of Framer again. We're going to erase this, and we're going to say to use motion.footer. The animation we're going to do on this is just like a subtle kind of like fade in. So we'll make the initial value on this opacity 0. And for the animate, we're going to do opacity 1. Nice and easy. We're also going to give this guy a class name, and these class names are going to correlate again to Tailwind CSS. BG white, shadow small. So we're saying have a white background, a small box shadow, dark :BG dash gray 800, and we want it to be full width full. What this syntax is saying is by default make the background white. If we're using the dark preference on our browser, make the background this gray 800 and full width. Okay, we're going to add an unorganized list in here with a class name of flex. Flex wrap. So we want this to wrap when we go to mobile sizes. But we want to justify our content center. A lot of this is kind of like the same as what we've already done. Type. We want our text to be centered. We want items to be centered. This just covers all the edge cases. We want a little bit of margin on this guy. Margin top 3. We want our text to be a little bit larger, so we're doing 2XL. We want our font to be kind of the bold variety here. We want our text to be a color of gray. 500. Dark again. Text gray 400. And on small sizes, we want no margin on the top. Margin top 0. And we want this guy to be full width. I know that was a lot. Basically, this is just saying have it display flex, make everything center, give it a little margin, and make it wrap on smaller sizes. Okay, in here, inside of our list, we're actually going to be expecting tags to map over. So we need to make sure that we are taking those in as a parameter here. And we will start off with an empty array. Okay, so down here we will do tags.map. We're going to call each entry in the array a tag. And for each tag we get in our array, we're going to generate an li element with padding x of 32. In here we need to actually change these quotes to backticks. because this is actually going to be a dynamic class name. And since we're changing those quotes, we need to add brackets here. TypeScript is happy. We want a lot of padding on these. So we're going to start off with 32 padding on medium screen sizes. We're going to do 20. And on small screen sizes, we're going to do 16. So these are adjusting based on the size of the screen. In addition to all this base class name here, we're going to add a dynamic class name. So we're checking the index. Is it equal to 1? If so, on small screen sizes, we want a border on the X axis and have it 2 pixels wide. Outside of this, we need to add our key so React doesn't get mad at us. And our key is going to be whatever our tag is plus its index. Okay, inside our li element, we're going to make a div with class name row. And we're going to say we want it to have a flex and a gap of 4. In here, we're going to add our tag, whatever the text is that our tag is saying. And then we can check our work, see where we're looking. So this is what we're after. It's clean, dry, and predictable. This is what we got so far. So something's wrong. What did we do wrong? Well, we made our hero tags component, but we're not using it anywhere. You notice back on our home page, which is what this is, we're not calling our hero tags component anywhere. So let's change that. Let's go down here after our motion div and add our hero tags. Now we can import that, give it a save, and, well, our hero tags component here is expecting us to pass it a tags property. But here we're not passing it tags. So basically we just need to make sure that we add tags here. And these can be, I mean, really whatever we want. But for our purposes, we're going to use these 3, clean, dry, and predictable. So let's pass them those. Clean, dry, predictable. Sounds great, right? But we can see here, TypeScript is now giving us an error before we even check our code. And the reason for this is because we didn't type what these tags array needs to be. So we could do something like this. Outside of our destructure, we can say we're expecting this to have a tags property that needs to be of type string array. What this is going to do is make sure that we only pass it an array with string types in it. So if we add like a 1 here, you can see TypeScript doesn't like it. It says number is not assignable to string. Same can be said if we try to pass it like a true value or an object or anything that's not a string. TypeScript will let us know immediately. So we go back to our code here and we can see we're kind of there. We've got our words, clean, dry, predictable. They're all lowercase, but we don't have our check marks. So for the icons, I'm actually using a package called Hero Icons. So we're going to need to install that as well. npm i at hero icons /react. Cool, that added them. Now we can go ahead and import the check icon that we're trying to use. And we can add that to our li element just before the tag right here. This is actually why we did a class name row flex with a gap. So we've got that in there. Now if we go and look, we now have our icons and the gap, but the text is still kind of funky. That's just because I put them in all lowercase here. So we can change those to that with capital letters. There are utility methods that could do this, but for our purposes, we're going to keep it simple. So this is what we've built so far. This is what we're trying to build. We're making progress. But what about these buttons? We have our book today, our view services buttons, but these don't actually take us anywhere because we haven't built pages for these yet. Oh, and by the way, there's that little animation that we coded. You can see that kind of coming in. Just nice little touch on things. Okay, let's do a little bit of cleanup. Just a second ago, we added this type to our hero tags destructuring, but this can be kind of cumbersome to read. Why don't we extract this here into an interface? So it's a little bit easier to read later on. We can do that by using our interface keyword. We will name this something like hero tags props. Then we can add our interface in here just like this. We're saying we expect to have tags in here that are of type string array. Now we just need to make sure to tell our function that we're expecting hero tags props. Now this is easier for maintainability. So later on, if we want to add more properties that are optional or stuff like that, we can just add them to this interface and everything just works. TypeScript magic. Okay, we have our component typed and we can now extend that type whenever we need. We have our footer, we have our buttons, our background, but we don't have our header up here. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, one thing I wanted to point out actually before we start is if we look at this header, it is actually persistent across all the pages. That is due to what's called a layout in Next.js. So in order to add that header, we need to go back to our file structure, find our root page under app here, and you can see right above it is this layout. In here is a bunch of things that Next.js put in here automatically. We can edit these and change these as we want, but for now, we're going to go down here to the return statement. We can see we have our HTML in our body with our font declarations, and then we're rendering out our children. What I want to do here is actually take these auto-generated classes away, put one in here from Tailwind for BG Gray 100. And then underneath this, we can actually add a navbar component. This lets Next.js know that regardless of any page within our app directory here, we want the navbar component to live above the other children. Now, TypeScript is a little mad here because we haven't created our navbar component just yet. And this is another great example for this components folder. So we go over to our components folder. We can create a new component, name it navbar.tsx. I'm going to use my snippets shortcut here to create the export for it. Now, as opposed to making you watch me code a whole navbar component, I'm going to paste a block of code in here. Here we just have a couple links. One for our homepage that says World Wide Web, goes to our root route. One for services, booking, and admin. Give this guy a save. And if we go back to our web app, it looks like we don't have our navbar. It actually put it here at the top, and it does work, but it pushed our footer down. And since we made the background image here the height of the viewport, we need to actually manually go in and move this guy up. Easy enough to do. Here, where we have our initial property on our hero tags component, we just need to add another one here for Y. And we want to move it up 64 pixels. We give this a refresh and we can see everything here. We've got our navbar, we've got our text, we've got our tags, and we have our links. Now these aren't wired up to routes that work yet, but that is for a future video. Now for this video, I did initially plan to dive into setting up our first API, but this side of it took a little bit longer than anticipated. So I'll do that in the next video when we're setting up server-side fetching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like this kind of format where we're live coding together? If not, let me know. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, because in the next video, we're setting up our first API route and our booking page. I'll see you there.